What if I told you that almost everything you've learned about building a business is, well, wrong? Today, we're diving into the book Rework, and we're going to tear down that traditional playbook. This isn't just some high-level theory, okay? This is a radical, proven philosophy for a totally new way of working.
Now, the guys who wrote Rework, they aren't some ivory tower academics. Nope. They're Jason Fried and David Heinemeier Hansson, the founders of 37 Signals, the company behind Basecamp. So everything in this book, it comes straight from their real-world experience building a small, lean, and wildly profitable company, while pretty much everyone else was telling them they were doing it all wrong. They've lived through recessions, they've seen markets shift, and they've absolutely thrived.
This quote right here, it just perfectly sums up the whole vibe of the book. It's got this combative, take-no-prisoners attitude. Rework basically argues that most of the business advice you hear, the stuff about massive growth, endless meetings, 5-year plans, raising tons of money, it's not just outdated, it's actually harmful. It's plain wrong. And the best part? They say there's a much better, way simpler way to do things.
All right, so let's get into it. We're going to walk through the core takedowns from the book. Think of it like this. We're going to challenge all those sacred cows of the business world, one by one. We'll look at the biggest myths they bust and the new common sense rules they offer instead.
Okay, first step. Let's tackle a big one. The myth of the perfect plan. You know what I'm talking about. That obsession with having this super detailed long-term business plan. The idea that you absolutely must have your next 5 years mapped out before you can even think about starting.
So Rework's philosophy on this is refreshingly simple. Planning is just guessing. Seriously, a long-term business plan? It's basically a fantasy. Why? Because there are way too many variables you just can't control. You can't control the market, you can't control your competitors, you sure as heck can't control the economy. Writing it all down might make you feel like you're in charge, but really, you're just pretending.
So the Rework way is to just ditch that whole mindset. Instead of locking yourself into these rigid multi-year plans, you just decide what you're going to do this week. That's it. Think about it. You have the most information, the clearest picture right before you act, not months or years in advance. This lets you be nimble, lets you improvise and adapt, and actually jump on opportunities when they pop up in the real world.
And this whole flexible approach, it also blows up another huge myth. The idea that you need a ton of outside investor money to get off the ground. Rework calls taking on investors Plan Z. Yeah, Plan Z. Why? Because the second you take their money, you're giving up control. Suddenly, you're answering to them instead of your customers. Your focus shifts from building an amazing product to just, making your investors happy. It's a huge distraction.
All right, let's move on to our next big takedown. This one is huge. It's this cultural obsession with the idea that more is always better. That every single company has to be on this relentless, never-ending quest for growth and expansion.
Rework just cuts right through the noise and asks a super simple question. Why? Why does everyone assume you have to grow? The book makes this amazing point that you should find the right size for your business and then just stay there. Small isn't some temporary phase you have to escape. It can be a fantastic, sustainable destination. Because let's be real, once you get huge, it's almost impossible to get small again. So find what feels right and own it.
And of course, tied into this more is better myth is the glorification of hustle culture. Oh man, Rework is absolutely brutal on this. They say it flat out, workaholism isn't a badge of honor, it's just stupid. Workaholics don't actually accomplish more, they just burn out. They create more problems than they solve because they're just throwing brute force hours at things instead of stepping back and finding smarter, more efficient solutions.
Man, I love this quote. It just completely flips the script on what it means to be a hero at work, right? The hero isn't the person grinding it out at 10 p.m. No way. The real hero is the person who's already home with their family because they figured out a smarter, faster way to get things done. It's a total mindset shift. True productivity is about being efficient, not about building up your endurance for pain.
So this whole culture of overwork, it doesn't just happen in a vacuum, right? It's usually a symptom of a totally broken work environment. And that brings us to our third major myth, the idea that the modern office is actually a good place to get work done. Rework argues, well, pretty much the exact opposite.
So what's the #1 productivity killer? Come on, you know the answer. It's meetings. The book literally calls them toxic. And here's why. They're the single worst kind of interruption. I want you to think about this for a second. A 1-hour meeting with, say, 10 people in it, that's not a 1-hour meeting. That is a 10-hour meeting. You've just vaporized 10 hours of collective company productivity that could have gone into doing actual, real work.
Now look, If you absolutely positively have to have a meeting, the book lays out some super clear, simple rules to make them less of a soul-crushing disaster. First, set a timer. When it goes off, meeting's over. Done. Second, invite as few people as humanly possible. Third, always have a clear agenda and a specific problem you're there to solve. And finally, and this is crucial, end with a concrete decision and make someone responsible for carrying it out.
But you know, meetings are just one piece of a bigger puzzle. The real enemy of productivity, the big boss at the end of the level, is interruption. To do meaningful, creative, deep work, you need long, uninterrupted stretches of time. The book calls this the alone zone. When your day is just chopped up into tiny little 15-minute, 30-minute blocks by emails, messages, and people tapping you on the shoulder, you can never get into that state of flow where the really good stuff actually happens.
Okay, so we've busted a bunch of myths about planning, growth, and productivity. So what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, it boils down to a really powerful, really simple call to action. Just get started. Stop planning, stop talking, and start doing.
But where do you start? The book has a great answer for that. Scratch your own itch. Honestly, the easiest and best way to create a great product is to make something you desperately want to use. You'll understand the problem inside and out, and you'll know instantly if your solution is any good, because guess what? You're customer number one. And this next part is maybe the most important thing in the entire book. You have to actually start making something. We all have that friend, right? The one who's always like, I had the idea for that years ago. But here's the hard truth. Ideas are cheap. They're a dime a dozen. Execution is the only thing that gives an idea value. What you do is what matters, not what you're thinking about doing someday. And please do not wait for perfection. It's a trap. Get your product out there sooner than you feel comfortable with. Seriously. As soon as it does the basics and isn't a complete mess, launch it. The whole point is to stop guessing what you think people want and start getting actual feedback from real, living, breathing users. You can always make it better later.
And that brings us to this final, perfect thought that really wraps everything up. Inspiration is perishable. Just let that sink in. That amazing idea you have right now, that fire in your belly, that motivation you're feeling, it's not going to last forever. It has an expiration date. Don't let it die on the vine while you're stuck in endless planning meetings and tweaking things to death. Act on it. Now.